Viros 9 was where 17 different species came to trade, negotiate, and mostly look down on humans. We were the adolescent species of the galaxy, intelligent enough to qualify for Interspecies Exchange Decree of 2184, but still considered primitive by most standards. The station architecture reflected this hierarchy. The grand diplomatic chambers occupied the upper rings, with progressively lesser species assigned to lower levels. Humans occupied Ring 12. Not quite the bottom, but close enough to smell it. I'd been stationed here for 13 months as part of Earth's Technical Diplomatic Corps, which was a fancy way of saying I fixed things when the more advanced species didn't want to bother. My specific title was Neural Network Recalibration Specialist. But what I actually did was crawl through maintenance tubes reconnecting wires when the Viros translation system glitched. "Rook, stop daydreaming and fix your tie. Ambassador Williams needs all staff present for the Galactic Frontier negotiations tonight." My supervisor, Hernandez, slapped a data pad against my workstation. "The Noctari delegation is attending." I groaned. "Why do they need tech support at a diplomatic function?" "Because humans need to show our value in any way possible," Hernandez said. "Not for the first time. Be in the Grand Hall at 1900 hours. And please, for the love of Earth, don't make any of your jokes." My jokes were apparently culturally insensitive, according to 3 formal complaints. But in my defense, I didn't know the Zelfori reproduced through spore-based humor exchanges. How was I supposed to know my knock-knock joke would be interpreted as a mating proposition? The Grand Hall lived up to its name, a vast chamber with a transparent ceiling, revealing the violet-tinged nebula that surrounded Viros 9. Floating light orbs created dramatic shadows, and the curved walls were lined with living plants from dozens of worlds. It was designed to impress, and it worked. I stood awkwardly near a refreshment table, nursing a glass of something that tasted like mint and gasoline. Human staff weren't supposed to mingle unless approached, but we were required to be visible representations of Earth's commitment to interstellar cooperation. In practice, this meant standing around looking uncomfortable while trying not to offend anyone. "You appear distressed, human." I nearly spilled my drink as I turned. Standing beside me was a Noctari female, tall and imposing in ceremonial armor that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Her skin had that characteristic blue tint, and her silver eyes lacked pupils. Despite all that, she was strikingly beautiful in an alien, predatory way. "I'm fine," I managed, quickly bowing my head in what I hoped was the appropriate gesture of respect. "Just observing." "Your observation includes frequent sighing and tapping your foot in what I believe is a human expression of impatience." Her voice had the metallic harmonic that all Noctari shared, like 2 people speaking in perfect unison. I smiled sheepishly. "That obvious, huh?" "Indeed." She tilted her head. "I am Lady Ceresa, diplomatic emissary of the Noctari Confederation." My heart rate doubled. I was talking to the Noctari ambassador, one of the most powerful political figures in this sector. Across the room, I could see Hernandez's eyes widen in alarm. "Mason Rook," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Neural network specialist for the Earth delegation." Neural networks. Primitive but fascinating technology. She took a sip from a goblet that appeared to be filled with something viscous and dark. "Your species shows potential despite its youth." Was that a compliment from a Noctari? "Thank you," I said, feeling oddly proud. "We're trying our best to catch up." "Your honesty is refreshing. Mason Rook. Most species pretend to be more advanced than they are in our presence." The conversation was going surprisingly well, and the 4th glass of mint gasoline had gone straight to my head. I felt a surge of confidence that, in retrospect, was the beginning of my downfall. "Well, not everyone can be ancient space vampires with immortality and cool armor," I joked. Ceresa's expression didn't change, but the air between us seemed to crackle with sudden tension. "I meant that as a compliment," I added quickly. "The Noctari are legendary. The stories about your species were my favorite when I was training for space service." That seemed to ease the tension. "We are aware of our reputation. Some find it intimidating." "Not me," I said with a smile that was about 80% alcohol-induced bravado. "I think it's fascinating. In fact, it would be an honor to learn more about Noctari culture sometime. Perhaps over dinner." The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. I immediately wanted to take them back, to explain I was just being friendly in a human way that absolutely did not constitute asking out one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. But it was too late. The room had gone eerily silent. Every alien in proximity had turned to stare at us. Hernandez looked like he was about to have a stroke. Ceresa stood perfectly still, her silver eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Then, in that dual-toned voice that seemed to echo in my chest, she said, "I accept your courtship proposal, Mason Rook of Earth." The goblet in her hand suddenly shattered. A drop of the dark liquid, which I now realized was definitely not wine, fell onto her palm. With one sharp fingernail, she cut a small line across her blue-tinged skin. Dark, almost black blood welled up. "Your hand," she commanded. Too shocked to disobey, I extended my right hand. With lightning speed, she grasped my wrist and drew her nail across my palm. A sharp sting. Then, my own red blood beaded along the cut. Ceresa pressed our bleeding palms together. Blood to blood, word to word, proposal accepted and witnessed. The first rite is complete. The room erupted in a flurry of whispers and movements. Several Noctari materialized from the crowd, surrounding us with ceremonial precision. What just happened?" I stammered. Ceresa's expression was impassive, but I swore I detected a hint of amusement in those silver eyes. "You have initiated the blood rite of eternal binding, Mason Rook," she said calmly. "In your terms, we are now engaged to be married." And that's how I accidentally proposed to a vampire ambassador from space. Chapter 2. Joke Wedding or Real Death. "You did what?" Hernandez's face had turned an impressive shade of purple as he paced back and forth in the small debriefing room where I'd been sequestered after the incident. Ambassador Williams sat across from me, her expression oscillating between horror and fascination. "I didn't know asking someone to dinner was the equivalent of a marriage proposal in Noctari culture," I protested for the 5th time. "It's not the dinner invitation," Ambassador Williams explained, pinching the bridge of her nose. "It's the specific phrasing you used, combined with the formal setting, your respective positions, and the fact that you acknowledge their status while expressing personal interest. In Noctari culture, that's a formal courtship declaration." "How was I supposed to know that?" I ran my hands through my hair in frustration. "Because it was in the cultural briefing package everyone receives," Hernandez exploded. "The one you clearly didn't read." He wasn't wrong. The package had been several thousand pages of dense text about hundreds of species. I'd skimmed the sections that seemed relevant to my job, mostly technical specifications and language guides. "Can we just explain the misunderstanding and withdraw?" I asked hopefully. Ambassador Williams shook her head grimly. "The blood rite of eternal binding is one of the most sacred traditions in Noctari culture. Breaking it without proper cause is considered a grave insult that could damage diplomatic relations for decades." "What happens if I go through with it?" The question felt surreal leaving my mouth. "You would become Lady Ceresa's consort," Williams said. "There are 3 more rituals to complete, culminating in the final blood exchange." "Final blood exchange sounds permanent," I said weakly. "The Noctari are effectively immortal," Williams confirmed. "Their blood contains nanobiotic agents that continuously repair cellular damage. The final exchange would infuse these into your system." I blinked, trying to process this information. So I'd become like them? Partially. You'd gain extended life and some regenerative capabilities. But you wouldn't be fully Noctari. And if I refuse? Williams and Hernandez exchanged glances. Traditionally, Williams said carefully, breaking a blood right after the first exchange is grounds for compensation. What kind of compensation? Your life, Hernandez said bluntly. Though in modern times, they might accept exile or permanent disgrace instead. I slumped in my chair. So my options are marry an immortal vampire ambassador or face execution? Great. There might be a diplomatic solution, Williams offered. I'll consult with the legal team. In the meantime, you'll be assigned a cultural liaison to help you understand the process you've initiated. That liaison turned out to be Talia Wren, a xenobiologist specializing in cross-species interaction. She arrived at my quarters the next morning, carrying several data pads and what looked like ancient paper scrolls. Talia was human, with East Asian features and short black hair streaked with purple. She wore the blue uniform of the scientific corps, rather than the gray of us technical grunts. Mason Rook, she asked, though it was clearly rhetorical since we were in my private quarters. I'm Dr. Talia Wren. I've been assigned to help you navigate this situation. You mean my accidental engagement to a vampire from space? I tried for humor, but it fell flat even to my own ears. The Noctari aren't vampires, she corrected, setting her materials on my small desk. That's a human projection based on superficial similarities. They're a highly advanced species with a complex biological structure that includes nanobiotically enhanced hemoglobin. They drink blood and live forever. Close enough, I muttered. Talia gave me a look that I would become very familiar with over the coming weeks. Equal parts exasperation and reluctant amusement. They consume hemoglobin-rich substances as part of their nutritional requirements, she said. And their lifespans are approximately 900 standard Earth years. Not eternal. Just extended. Forgive me if I'm not in the mood for a biology lesson, I said. I'm more concerned with getting out of this without starting an interstellar incident. Talia's expression softened. I understand. But knowledge is your best weapon right now. The more you understand about Noctari culture, the better your chances of finding an honorable exit, if that's what you want. What else would I want? She shrugged. Some might see this as an extraordinary opportunity. No human has ever been so deeply integrated into Noctari society. I stared at her. You can't be serious. I'm a scientist. Mason. I see the research potential. She held up a hand before I could protest. But my priority is helping you. Let's start with the basics of the blood right. Over the next few hours, Talia explained the complex tradition I'd unwittingly stepped into. The blood rite of eternal binding dated back thousands of years to the early days of Noctari civilization. It consisted of 4 rituals spaced over a lunar cycle of their home world, approximately 52 Earth days. The first rite, which I'd completed, was the declaration and initial bonding. The second rite involved a ceremonial exchange of personal histories and was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. The third rite was a public presentation to the Noctari Council, and the fourth rite was the final blood exchange, the permanent binding. The good news, Talia said, is that you can potentially withdraw before the final rite without severe consequences, provided you have legitimate grounds under Noctari law. What counts as legitimate? Primarily, evidence that the union would cause harm to either party or to the Noctari people. She scrolled through one of her data pads. There are precedents where engagements were broken due to genetic incompatibility or political conflicts. Genetic incompatibility sounds promising, I said. I'm human. She's Noctari. How compatible can we be? Talia grimaced. Unfortunately, Noctari and humans are surprisingly compatible at a genetic level. Some xenobiologists even theorize a common ancestor species, though that's controversial. Of course it is, I muttered. What about political conflicts? I'm nobody important. Surely that's a problem. Actually, your status as a representative of Earth makes you politically viable as a consort. Not ideal by their standards, but acceptable. I dropped my head into my hands. This just keeps getting better. There's another option, Talia said hesitantly. You could complete the rituals. I looked up sharply. Become her eternal vampire husband? No thanks. The position of consort doesn't necessarily imply romantic or physical involvement, Talia explained. It's more of a political and spiritual alliance. And the benefits could be considerable. Extended life, elevated status for humanity in the galactic community, access to Noctari technology and knowledge. At the cost of my freedom and normal life? Yes, she admitted. There would be significant personal sacrifice involved. I stood up and paced the small confines of my quarters. I need to talk to Ceresa. Maybe she doesn't want this either. Maybe she was just saving face by accepting. Talia's expression turned skeptical. Noctari don't typically act against their desires for the sake of appearances. Their culture values direct communication. Still, there must be some way out of this that doesn't end with my execution or eternal servitude. I'll continue researching possibilities, Talia promised. In the meantime, you should prepare for the second rite. Even if you find an exit, you'll need to participate in at least one more ceremony to maintain diplomatic relations. After Talia left, I lay on my bunk staring at the ceiling, trying to process the absurdity of my situation. I'd come to Veros 9 hoping for adventure and career advancement. Instead, I'd managed to entangle myself in an ancient, alien marriage ritual with potentially lethal consequences. My thoughts were interrupted by a chime at my door. When I opened it, a tall Noctari male in formal armor stood outside, his face impassive beneath intricate facial markings that indicated high military rank. Mason Rook, he said, his dual-toned voice even more pronounced than Ceresa's. I am General Valek, Chief of Security for the Noctari delegation. I swallowed hard. Nice to meet you. His silver eyes narrowed. I doubt that. May I enter? I stepped aside, acutely aware of how the general's imposing frame made my quarters seem even smaller. I will be direct, human, Valek said once the door closed. Your engagement to Lady Ceresa is unacceptable. You will find a way to withdraw. Relief flooded through me. I completely agree. I never intended. Your intentions are irrelevant. He cut me off. What matters is that this union cannot proceed. Lady Ceresa holds a position of tremendous importance to our people. Her consort must strengthen our bloodline and political standing. My relief quickly faded. Valek wasn't here to help me. He was here to threaten me. I'm looking for a diplomatic solution, I said carefully. One that preserves everyone's honor. There is no honor in this farce, Valek spat. A human consort would weaken Lady Ceresa's position and expose our confederation to ridicule. Then why did she accept? I asked. Something flickered across Valek's face. Anger, certainly, but also something else. Concern? Lady Ceresa has her reasons, he said stiffly. But they do not serve the greater interests of our people. Maybe you should talk to her about that, I suggested. Valek stepped closer, looming over me. I am talking to you, human. Find a way to withdraw that preserves Lady Ceresa's dignity, or I will find a way to remove you from this equation permanently. With that, he turned and left, the door sliding shut behind him with an ominous hiss. Great. Now I had a murderous vampire general gunning for me on top of everything else. I needed to see Ceresa directly, but arranging a meeting with the Noctari ambassador proved nearly impossible. Her schedule was packed with diplomatic functions, and the few messages I sent through official channels went unanswered. After 3 days of increasing anxiety, I decided on a more direct approach. The Noctari delegation had taken over an entire section of Ring 3, far above my usual access level. But, as a neural network specialist, I had maintenance credentials that could get me into most areas of the station, provided I had a plausible work order. I created a fake repair ticket for a translation node near the Noctari quarters and made my way up through the station's service corridors. Security was tighter than usual, but my Earth Corps uniform and confident stride got me past most checkpoints. The Noctari section was immediately distinguishable from the rest of the station. The lighting was dimmer, with a reddish tint that presumably mimicked their homeworld. The temperature was several degrees cooler, and the air had a metallic tang. I located a maintenance panel near what I believed to be Saresa's private chambers and pretended to work on it while watching for an opportunity. After about 20 minutes, I saw her emerge flanked by 2 guards. "Lady Saresa," I called out, stepping away from the panel. "May I speak with you?" The guards moved in front of her immediately, hands on weapons. Saresa regarded me with those unnerving silver eyes. "Mason Rook," she said calmly. "This is unexpected." "I've been trying to arrange a meeting through official channels," I explained. "And now you attempt unofficial ones." Was that amusement in her voice? "Leave us," she told the guards, who hesitated before stepping back a respectful distance. "Thank you," I said, suddenly unsure how to proceed now that I had her attention. "You wish to discuss our engagement," she stated, rather than asked. "Yes. I think there's been a misunderstanding. On Earth, asking someone to dinner isn't a marriage proposal." "I am aware of human courtship customs," she said. "Just as you should have been aware of ours before initiating the blood rite." "That's just it. I wasn't aware. It was an honest mistake." Saresa studied me for a long moment. "What do you propose now, Mason Rook?" "I was hoping we could find a way to undo this, without offending your people or causing a diplomatic incident." "The blood rite cannot simply be undone," she said. "It is binding." "But surely there are exceptions. Dr. Wren mentioned genetic incompatibility or political conflicts." "There are no significant genetic incompatibilities between us," Saresa said. "And while your political status is humble, it is not prohibitively so." I felt my hopes sinking. "So there's no way out?" Saresa tilted her head, those silver eyes seeming to look through me rather than at me. "You fear this union. Wouldn't you? I'm being asked to give up my normal lifespan, my career, everything I know, because of a cultural misunderstanding. Fear is natural when facing the unknown," she acknowledged. "But consider this. Mason Rook, you are the first human to be offered such an opportunity. You would have access to knowledge and experiences no other of your kind has ever had." "General Valek doesn't seem to share your enthusiasm," I said. "He made it pretty clear he thinks this union would weaken your position." Something hardened in Saresa's expression. "General Valek exceeded his authority by approaching you. His concerns are noted, but not decisive." "He seemed pretty determined to remove me from the equation," I said. "Did he threaten you directly?" Saresa asked, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. "Not in so many words, but the implication was clear." Saresa's eyes narrowed. "I will address this. In the meantime, you should continue preparing for the second rite. Dr. Wren will assist you." "So that's it? We're going ahead with this?" "For now," Saresa said. "The blood rite provides opportunities for withdrawal under specific circumstances. But those circumstances must emerge naturally. They cannot be fabricated." With that cryptic statement, she gestured for her guards to return and swept away down the corridor, leaving me with more questions than answers. That night, I had the first dream. I found myself standing on a cliff overlooking a vast crimson ocean under 3 pale moons. I knew somehow that this was Noctur, the Noctari homeworld. The air was thin and cold, the gravity slightly stronger than Earth's. Behind me rose a massive structure, part building, part living organism, its spires and arches pulsing with bioluminescent veins. A fortress or palace, ancient beyond reckoning. And within it, I could feel a presence calling to me, drawing me inward with a pull I couldn't resist. I woke, gasping. The details of the dream already fading, but the emotional impact lingering, a strange mixture of dread and exhilaration. It felt more like a memory than a dream. Over the next week, the dreams continued, each more vivid than the last. I found myself wandering through vast halls of living stone, witnessing battles fought with weapons of light and darkness, hearing snatches of conversation in the Naktari language, which I somehow understood perfectly within the dreams. And always, there was that presence drawing me deeper, showing me these visions for some purpose I couldn't quite grasp. During my waking hours, I met regularly with Talia, who guided me through the intricacies of the second rite. It required me to present my bloodline history, essentially my family tree and personal accomplishments, to Saressa and the Naktari elders. The problem is, I told Talia, I don't know much about my family history. My parents were both only children, and my grandparents died when I was young. That's actually not uncommon for humans, Talia assured me. The Naktari are aware of our shorter lifespans and less detailed record-keeping. You'll only need to go back 3 generations. And what about the personal accomplishments part? Somehow, I don't think fixing translation nodes is going to impress immortal space vampires. Talia gave me that look again. First, stop calling them vampires. Second, the accomplishments don't need to be grandiose. The Naktari value authenticity and personal growth. Talk about challenges you've overcome, skills you've mastered, principles you've upheld. That sounds suspiciously like a job interview. In a way, it is, Talia admitted. You're being evaluated for a position in their society. A position I never applied for, I reminded her. And yet, here we are. She handed me a data pad. I've prepared some questions to help structure your presentation. Work on them today, and we'll review your answers tomorrow. As Talia turned to leave, a question that had been nagging at me suddenly surfaced. Why are you helping me? I mean, really helping me, not just going through the motions? She paused at the door. What makes you think I'm really helping you? You're the only person who doesn't seem horrified or fascinated by my situation. You're just pragmatic, like you've seen this before. Talia smiled slightly. I haven't seen this exact situation before, but I've studied interspecies relationships for most of my career. The patterns are familiar, even when the specifics aren't. That doesn't answer my question. No, it doesn't. She hesitated, then added, let's just say I have a personal interest in seeing the situation resolved in a way that benefits everyone involved. Before I could press further, she was gone, leaving me with more questions about her motives and a datapad full of inquiries about my unremarkable life history. The dreams intensified as the second rite approached. Each night, I ventured deeper into the living fortress on Noctur, learning more about Naktari history and culture than any official briefing could provide. I began to recognize recurring figures, ancient leaders, warriors, scholars, all with their distinctive facial markings and armor designs. And I began to notice something else. Many of the oldest Naktari, the ones from the earliest visions, looked different. Their features were not quite as angular, their skin tone less blue. They looked more human. When I mentioned these dreams to Talia, her reaction was immediate and intense. You're experiencing memory transference, she said, scanning me with a handheld medical device. It's an extremely rare side effect of the first rite. The blood exchange must have established a deeper connection than usual. Are these real memories? I asked. They feel so authentic. They're likely ancestral memories stored in Naktari blood at a molecular level, Talia explained, examining the scanner readings with fascination. Their nanobiotics don't just repair cells. They store and transmit genetic memory. So I'm seeing Saressa's memories? Not necessarily hers specifically. More like a collective history passed down through their bloodline. She looked up from the scanner, her expression troubled. This is unprecedented in human Noctari interactions. I need to run more tests. Is it dangerous? I don't think so, but it's definitely unexpected. She hesitated. Have you told anyone else about this? No, just you. Keep it that way for now, she advised. This could be significant. The day of the second rite arrived too quickly. I found myself in a ceremonial chamber, deep within the Noctari section of the station, wearing formal Earth Corps dress uniform, the best we could do on short notice. Before me sat Saressa and 6 other Noctari elders, their faces impassive as I recounted my family history and personal journey. I felt ridiculous talking about my childhood in New Chicago, my education at Midwest Tech, and my unremarkable career in the Earth Corps. But I followed Talia's advice, focusing on challenges overcome and lessons learned rather than impressive achievements. To my surprise, the elders seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about human family structures and educational practices. When I mentioned losing my parents in the Atlantic seawall collapse of 2178, several nodded in what appeared to be sympathy. "And what do you seek from this union, Mason Rook?" one elder asked, the first direct question about the engagement itself. I glanced at Saressa, whose expression revealed nothing. Talia had coached me on diplomatic responses, but suddenly I was tired of pretending. "Honestly, I didn't seek this union at all," I said. "It was a cultural misunderstanding, but since I'm here, I suppose what I seek is understanding of your people, your history, and why Lady Saressa accepted my accidental proposal." A murmur ran through the elders. Talia, standing near the back of the room, closed her eyes in what looked like pained resignation. But Saressa surprised me. "Honesty is valued among the Noctari," she said. "Mason Rook speaks truth, and truth honors the blood rite more than false platitudes." The second rite concluded with another small blood exchange, just a drop from each of us mixed in a ceremonial bowl. As our blood mingled, I felt a strange resonance, like a distant chord struck inside my mind. That night, the dreams reached a new level of intensity. I found myself in what appeared to be a laboratory deep within the living fortress. Ancient Noctari worked with equipment both biological and mechanical, conducting experiments on themselves. I watched as they injected modified genetic material into their bloodstreams, monitored the changes, made adjustments, generation after generation. The modifications continued, the Noctari gradually transforming from something nearly human into the blue-skinned, silver-eyed beings I now knew. And in the center of it all was a genetic template, the original source material they were working from, material that looked remarkably like human DNA. I woke with a gasp, heart pounding. This wasn't just a dream or random ancestral memory. This was information, important information, being deliberately shown to me. But by whom and why? The next morning, Talia arrived looking exhausted, as if she hadn't slept. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Privately." She led me to a small research lab in the science core section, swept it for monitoring devices, then activated a privacy field. "What's going on?" I asked, alarmed by her paranoia. "I've been analyzing your blood samples," she said, pulling up data on a secure terminal. "The nanobiotics from the first rite should have dissipated by now in a human system. They haven't. They're replicating." "Is that bad?" "It's unprecedented," she corrected. "And it coincides with your dreams, which I now believe are targeted information packets being transmitted through the nanobiotics." "Transmitted by whom?" "That's the question." Talia paced the small lab. "The Noctari Council doesn't know about this. I checked with my contacts. This is happening outside official channels." "Saressa?" I suggested. "Possibly. Or someone else with access to ancient Noctari technology." She stopped pacing and faced me directly. "Mason, I think you're being prepared for something." The dreams. The accelerated nanobiotic replication. It's all leading somewhere. The final right? Maybe. Or something else entirely. She hesitated. There's more. I've been researching Noctari history, and I found references to an ancient ceremonial language used exclusively in the blood rite. It's called Elder Tongue, and it grants special rights to those who speak it during the ritual. What kind of rights? The texts aren't specific, but they suggest that certain phrases can alter the nature of the bond or even redirect it. She handed me a small data chip. I've compiled what I could find. Memorize it. Why are you giving me this? I asked suspiciously. What's your stake in all this? Talia's expression hardened. Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting to understand Noctari biology and history. Your situation provides a unique opportunity. So I'm your research subject. You're someone in a difficult position who I'm trying to help, she corrected. But, yes, I'm also learning from your experience. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. I wasn't entirely convinced, but I pocketed the data chip anyway. Whatever Talia's motivations, her help had been invaluable so far. There's something else you should know, I said. I think the Noctari might have been human originally, or at least something very close to human. Talia's eyes widened. What makes you say that? I described the laboratory dream, the genetic modifications, the gradual transformation from near-human to Noctari over countless generations. That would explain the compatibility, she murmured, more to herself than to me. And the memory transfer. She looked up sharply. Have you told anyone else about this? No. Don't. This could be explosive information, politically speaking. Why? What does it matter if they were once human-like? Think about it, Talia urged. The Noctari are one of the most powerful and ancient species in known space. Their claimed history goes back over 50,000 years. If they were once human, or proto-human, it would mean humans are much older as a species than anyone thought, I realized, and that we had advanced technology tens of thousands of years ago. Exactly, which raises all sorts of questions about what happened in between, and why Earth civilization seems so young by comparison. My head was spinning with implications. But why show me this? Why now? I don't know, Talia admitted, but I intend to find out. Over the next 2 weeks, the dreams continued, showing me more of Noctari history, their rise to power, their wars with other species, their eventual establishment of the Confederation that now controlled the galactic frontier. I saw how they used their extended lifespans and technological prowess to outlast and outmaneuver their rivals, playing political games that spanned centuries. And through it all, I felt that presence guiding me, showing me specific memories for a purpose I still couldn't fully grasp. Meanwhile, preparations for the Third Rite accelerated. This ceremony would be public, a formal presentation to the Noctari Council, where Saressa and I would declare our intention to complete the blood rite. It was the last opportunity to withdraw, without severe consequences. Talia and I spent hours practicing the ceremonial language and reviewing Noctari customs. She was particularly focused on the elder tongue phrases she'd discovered. If you need to assert a claim or right during the ceremony, these phrases will be recognized as legitimate under ancient law, she explained. The Noctari value tradition above almost everything else. But when would I need to assert a claim? I asked. The whole point is to find a way out of this, not make new claims. Just be prepared, she insisted. Things might not go as planned. She was right about that, though not in the way either of us expected. 2 days before the Third Rite, General Valek made his move. I was returning to my quarters after a meeting with Ambassador Williams when 2 Noctari guards seized me in the corridor. Mason Rook, one said formally. You are summoned to appear before the Security Council on charges of espionage. Espionage? I sputtered. That's ridiculous. They didn't respond, simply escorting me to a secure chamber deep in the Naktari section. There, Valek waited, along with several other Naktari officials I didn't recognize. Mason Rook, Valek began without preamble. You stand accused of using your position to access restricted Naktari information. What information? I haven't accessed anything. We have evidence that you have been receiving unauthorized data transfers containing classified historical and biological information. Valek projected images of my brain activity, showing unusual patterns that corresponded with my dreams. You've been scanning my brain? I asked incredulously. All participants in the blood rite are monitored for compatibility, Valek said dismissively. These scans reveal you have been receiving extensive data beyond what the ritual authorizes. I realized with a sinking feeling that he was using my dreams, the memory transfers, as evidence against me. Somehow, he knew about them. I haven't done anything wrong, I insisted. If I'm receiving information, it's not by my choice or action. Ignorance does not negate culpability, Valek said coldly. The penalty for espionage against the Naktari Confederation is severe. However, given the diplomatic situation, we are prepared to show leniency if you immediately withdraw from the blood rite and accept permanent exile from Naktari space. And there it was, his real objective. He'd manufactured these charges to force me out of the engagement to Ceresa. I want to speak with Lady Ceresa, I demanded. Lady Ceresa is occupied with diplomatic matters and has delegated this security issue to me, Valek said smoothly. You will make your decision now, human. I knew if I accepted his terms, I'd never get the chance to talk to Ceresa. Whatever was happening with the memory transfers, whatever she or someone else was trying to show me, would remain a mystery. I refuse, I said, straightening my spine. These charges are false, and I demand a formal hearing before the full Naktari Council, as is my right as a participant in the blood rite. Valek's eyes narrowed dangerously. You dare to invoke ritual rites? I do. I switched to the Elder Tongue, using one of the phrases Talia had made me memorize. Vaknareth Suriel Morith. I claim the right of council judgment. Valek actually flinched, clearly shocked that I knew the ancient ceremonial language. The other Naktari in the room murmured among themselves, equally surprised. Very well, Valek said after a tense moment. You will have your council hearing, immediately following the third rite ceremony. Until then, you will remain in protective custody. You mean prisoner, I corrected. Call it what you will, Valek said with a cold smile. The result is the same. I was escorted to a small but comfortable chamber and left under guard. My communication devices were confiscated, leaving me isolated and unable to contact Talia or anyone from Earth. For 2 days, I paced my elegant prison, trying to make sense of what was happening. Valek was clearly making a power play, but there was more to it than simple opposition to my engagement to Ceresa. He seemed genuinely alarmed by the memory transfers, which suggested he knew their source and significance. The dreams continued, more intense than ever. I found myself witnessing a crucial moment in Naktari history, the creation of the first blood rite. I saw a figure, neither fully human nor fully Naktari, standing before an assembly of early elders, declaring that their transformed species would always remember its origins through the ritual of blood bonding. When the cycle completes, the figure proclaimed in Elder Tongue, the original pact will be honored, and what was divided shall be reunited. I woke from this dream with those words echoing in my mind, a sense of urgent purpose filling me. Whatever was happening, whatever Valek feared, it centered on this original pact and the completion of some kind of cycle. On the day of the third rite, I was provided with ceremonial robes, black, with silver embroidery, in patterns that matched my dream visions. The guards escorted me to the grand ceremonial chamber where the ritual would take place. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows above. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, and in the center stood a raised dais, surrounded by tiered seating, filled with Noctari officials and dignitaries. I spotted a small Earth delegation, including Ambassador Williams, looking worried. Talia was nowhere to be seen. Saressa waited on the dais, resplendent in ceremonial armor that seemed to absorb light. Her silver eyes found mine across the chamber, and I felt a jolt of recognition, connection. I couldn't name the sensation, but it was powerful. As I approached the dais, flanked by guards, General Valek stepped forward to address the assembly. "Honored Council," he began, his dual-toned voice reverberating through the chamber. "Before we proceed with the third rite, I must bring a matter of security to your attention. Mason Rook stands accused of espionage against the Confederation." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Saressa's expression remained impassive, but I sensed a tension in her stance. "This is a serious accusation," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "What evidence supports it?" Valek projected the same brain scans he'd shown me. "These readings indicate unauthorized data transfer, far beyond ritual parameters. The human has been receiving classified historical and biological information." "Is this true, Mason Rook?" Saressa asked, turning to me. All eyes in the chamber fixed on me. I took a deep breath, recalling Talia's advice about honesty and directness. "I have been experiencing dreams, visions of Noctari history," I admitted, "but I did not seek them out or steal them. They came to me after the first rite." "Memory transference is a known, if rare, side effect of the blood rite," Saressa observed. "It is not espionage. The content and volume of these transfers is unprecedented," Valek insisted. "They contain information no outsider should possess, including Origins data classified at the highest level." At the mention of Origins data, several council members shifted uncomfortably. Clearly, this was sensitive information. "What Origins data?" one elder demanded. Before Valek could respond, I spoke. "I've seen the genetic modifications, how the early Noctari transformed themselves from near-human to your current form over thousands of generations." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Several council members rose to their feet in alarm. "This proves my point," Valek said triumphantly. "No human should have this knowledge. It threatens the very foundation of our society." "Or perhaps it fulfills it," came a new voice. Talia Wren entered the chamber, escorted by two Noctari guards who seemed uncertain whether she was a prisoner or a guest. She carried an ancient-looking data module. "Who are you to interrupt this proceeding?" Valek demanded. "Dr. Talia Wren, xenobiologist and historical researcher," she said calmly. "I have information relevant to these accusations." She looked to Saressa, who nodded permission. "The memory transfers Mason Rook has experienced are not random," Talia explained, activating the data module. "They are a program sequence encoded in Lady Saressa's bloodline, designed to activate when the blood rite is performed with a compatible human." An ancient Noctari text appeared in the air above the dais, glowing symbols scrolling past. "This is from the first archives," Talia continued. "It describes a prophecy, or rather, a plan, laid down by your ancestors. Every 10,000 years, the Noctari are to seek renewal through blood bonding with their original species. This is not espionage. It is destiny." "Blasphemy!" Valek snarled. "This human knows nothing of our destiny." "Perhaps not," Saressa said quietly. "But I do." All eyes turned to her as she stepped forward. "I accepted Mason Rook's proposal because I recognized what he was, what he represents," she said. "The completion of the cycle foretold by our founders. His genetic profile triggered recognition protocols in my blood that have been dormant for millennia." "You knew?" I asked, stunned. "All this time?" "Not at first," she admitted. "But as the memory transfers progressed, I began to understand. The first rite activated ancient programming in both our bloodlines." "This is absurd," Valak protested. You would bind our noble species to these primitives based on ancient superstition. Not superstition, Saressa corrected. Science. Our ancestors encoded this renewal protocol for a reason, to prevent genetic stagnation over the millennia. Without periodic reconnection to our root species, we face eventual decline. The council members were conferring urgently among themselves, clearly divided on how to respond to these revelations. Valak, seeing his position weakening, made a desperate move. Even if this were true, this particular human is unsuitable. He is ignorant, low-ranking, culturally incompatible. I challenge that assessment. I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. Drawing on the knowledge from my dreams and Talia's coaching, I switched to Elder tongue. Nareth Vecna Suriel Morithkal. I claim the right of ancestral voice. The phrase echoed through the chamber with strange resonance, as if the very walls recognized the ancient words. Every Naktari present went completely still. How does he know this phrase? One elder whispered, audible in the sudden silence. Because it is his right to know it, Saressa answered. As it was encoded in the memory transfer. Valak's face contorted with rage. This changes nothing. I will not allow our pure bloodline to be contaminated by human weakness. In a swift motion, he drew an energy weapon from his armor. If the council will not protect our future, I will. He fired at me, but Saressa moved faster than seemed possible, interposing herself between us. The energy blast struck her armor, dissipating in a shower of sparks. Guards! She commanded, and instantly, Valak was surrounded, his weapon confiscated. You are relieved of duty, General, Saressa said coldly, and will face judgment for this treasonous act. As Valak was led away, protest dying on his lips, Saressa turned back to me. The Third Right stands at a crossroads, she said formally. Mason Rook has invoked ancestral voice. By our most ancient laws, he now has the right to determine the nature of our bond. All attention focused on me once more. I realized I was being offered a choice, not just for myself, but potentially for the future relationship between humans and Naktari. I choose completion, I said, the words coming from some deeper knowledge awakened within me. But not as it has been. The blood right should be a bond of equals, not of subjugation or obligation. I propose a new pact, one of mutual exchange and respect. Murmurs ran through the assembly, but they weren't entirely negative. Many seemed intrigued. That is your right, Saressa acknowledged. The ancestral voice may reshape the bond. She extended her hand, palm up. I placed mine atop it, and with a swift motion, she drew a line across both our palms with a ceremonial blade that appeared from her armor. Our blood mingled once more. But this time, I felt a surge of something more than memory, a sense of potential, of pathways opening. Blood to blood, word to word, Saressa intoned. The Third Right is complete, and the path to the fourth is set. Chapter 3, Wedding, Blood, and Rebellion. The 2 weeks between the Third and Fourth Rites were a whirlwind of activity. My status changed overnight from accused spy to designated consort with ancestral voice, apparently a big deal in Naktari culture. I was moved to luxurious quarters in the Naktari section and assigned a staff of attendants. Talia became my official cultural liaison, though her role seemed to have expanded beyond simple advisory. The council granted her unprecedented access to Naktari historical archives, suggesting her research had gained official approval. You've started something significant, she told me during one of our daily preparation sessions. The conservative faction is in disarray after Valak's disgrace, and the moderates see potential advantages in closer human-Naktari relations. What about Saressa? I asked. I've barely seen her since the Third Right. She's been in continuous council sessions, Talia explained. Your invocation of ancestral voice forced them to reconsider many long-held policies. It's not just about your marriage anymore. It's about the future relationship between our species. Marriage. I tested the word, which still felt surreal. Am I really going through with this? Talia studied me thoughtfully. Are you having second thoughts? I'm having every thought imaginable, I admitted. Part of me still wants to run screaming back to Earth. But another part, I hesitated, trying to articulate the strange sense of rightness that had been growing within me. Another part feels like this is where I'm supposed to be, like everything has been leading to this. The memory transfers, Talia nodded. They're reshaping your perspective. Is that dangerous? Am I losing myself? I don't think so, she said after a moment's consideration. You're not becoming less Mason. You're becoming more than Mason. The memories are adding to you, not replacing you. That was somewhat reassuring, though I still worried about the extent to which I was being influenced by forces beyond my understanding. The dreams continued, but they changed in character. Less historical narrative, more practical knowledge. I found myself absorbing Naktari language, customs, political structures, and even biological information at an accelerated rate. It was as if some ancient program was preparing me for my new role. 5 days before the final rite, Ambassador Williams requested a meeting. We convened in a neutral diplomatic chamber, with Talia present as my advisor. Mason, Williams began, her expression serious. I want to ensure you understand the full implications of what you're undertaking. Once the final rite is complete, your status as an Earth citizen becomes complicated. Complicated how? The final blood exchange will alter your biology, she explained. Under current Earth law, that could potentially change your legal classification, and your position as consort to a Naktari ambassador creates unprecedented diplomatic considerations. You're saying I might not be considered human anymore? The thought was disturbing. Legally speaking, it's uncharted territory, Williams admitted. We're drafting new protocols, but they won't be ready before your ceremony. What are my options? You could postpone the final rite until the legal framework is established, Williams suggested. Or you could proceed with the understanding that your status will be somewhat ambiguous for a time. I considered this. Postponement seemed reasonable, but something told me delay would be dangerous. The momentum of events felt important, almost necessary. I'll proceed as planned, I decided. But I want Earth's interests protected in whatever new relationship emerges from this. Williams nodded. That's what we're working toward. This could be the beginning of a new era in human-Naktari relations, if handled properly. After she left, Talia gave me a speculative look. You're thinking beyond your personal situation now. That's good. Is it? A month ago, I was just a tech specialist trying to keep my head down. Now I'm making decisions that could affect interspecies relations for centuries. Welcome to the big leagues, Talia said with a wry smile. For what it's worth, I think you're handling it remarkably well. 3 days before the final rite, Saressa finally made time for a private meeting. She came to my quarters late in the evening, dismissing her guards and my attendants. You look troubled, Mason Rook, she observed, as we sat in the comfortable seating area overlooking the nebula through a vast viewport. Wouldn't you be? Everything's happening so fast, and I still don't fully understand what I'm getting into. Saressa nodded. That is fair. Ask your questions, and I will answer what I can. Why me? It was the question that had been haunting me from the beginning. Out of all humans, why did your blood recognize mine? The recognition protocol seeks specific genetic markers, fragments of DNA sequence that match the original template used by our ancestors, she explained. These markers are rare, but not unique. There are perhaps thousands of humans who would trigger recognition. So it was just luck that I was the one who accidentally proposed. A hint of amusement crossed Saressa's face. Perhaps not entirely. The protocols create a certain resonance. It may have unconsciously influenced your behavior, just as it influenced my acceptance. That was both reassuring and unsettling. The idea that some ancient genetic programming had been quietly nudging us together. What happens after the final rite? I asked. What will I become? Physically, you will gain some Noctari traits: extended lifespan, enhanced cellular regeneration, improved sensory capabilities. But you will remain fundamentally human, Saressa assured me. The more significant changes will be social and political. As my consort with ancestral voice, you will have standing in our society that no human has ever held. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Saressa's silver eyes held mine. Renewal. The founders encoded the cycle for a reason: to prevent our species from becoming stagnant, both genetically and culturally. Your perspective, your different way of thinking, these are valuable correctives to a society tens of thousands of years old. That's a lot of pressure, I said. Indeed. But you have already shown capacity for the role by invoking ancestral voice and proposing a new form of bond. She tilted her head curiously. How did you know to do that? I'm not entirely sure, I admitted. The knowledge was just there when I needed it, like muscle memory for something I'd never actually done before. Saressa nodded. The memory transfers are functioning as designed. Then, my ancestors were thorough. A thought occurred to me. Did you experience anything similar? Memory transfers from my blood to yours? Yes, she said simply. I have seen Earth through your eyes. I have felt human emotions with their unique intensity. It has been enlightening. Is that why you saved me from Valak? Because you understood me better? Partly, she acknowledged. But also because he threatened something important: the renewal cycle that our founders established for our survival. Valak and his faction fear change, but change is necessary for any species to thrive. We talked for hours, each gaining a deeper understanding of the other. By the time Saressa left, I felt more comfortable with the path ahead, still nervous, but no longer terrified. The final rite was to take place not on Viros D9, but on a Noctari ceremonial vessel called Avarathos, a living ship that resembled the fortress from my dreams. It was ancient, beyond reckoning, a biological construct that had witnessed countless blood rites over the millennia. As our shuttle approached, I gasped at the sight. Avarathos was massive, easily 10 times the size of Viros Station. Its exterior, a complex lattice of bone-like structures interwoven with pulsing bioluminescent veins. It didn't look built so much as grown, a cathedral of living tissue and energy suspended against the backdrop of the nebula. It's magnificent, I breathed. Beside me, Talia nodded in agreement. There's nothing like it in human architecture, a perfect fusion of biology and technology. The shuttle docked at what appeared to be a mouth-like opening in the vessel's side. As we disembarked, I felt a subtle vibration through the deck plates, almost like a heartbeat. We were escorted through vast corridors that reminded me of my dreams, though the reality was even more impressive. Chambers opened into other chambers. Ceilings soared to dizzying heights. And everywhere, there was that sense of aliveness, of being inside a sentient entity rather than a constructed vessel. Our delegation included Talia, Ambassador Williams, and a small honor guard of Earth Corps officers. The Noctari contingent was much larger: council members, ceremonial guards, and various officials whose functions I was still learning to recognize. Saressa met us in what appeared to be a preparation chamber. She wore ceremonial armor more elaborate than any I'd seen before, with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow across its surface. The final rite will begin at the alignment of the 3 moons, she informed me, though we were light years from Noctur and its moons. Apparently, the ship maintained the homeworld's astronomical calendar regardless of location. What exactly will happen? I asked, my nerves returning despite our previous conversation. We will stand before the 13 lords, The most ancient bloodlines of our people, Saressa explained. You will be presented with the Chalice of Origins, which contains synthesized blood from our founders. I will drink from the Chalice of Renewal, which will contain a small amount of your blood mixed with catalysts. The exchange will create a permanent bond between us. And after that, we're married. The word still felt inadequate for what we were undertaking. In human terms, yes, Saressa confirmed. Though the Noctari concept encompasses more than your marriage traditions, we will be bound not just legally or socially, but biologically, our bloodlines connected across time. That sounded both profound and slightly terrifying. I'm ready, I said, hoping it was true. The ceremony began with a procession through the living corridors of Avarathos, leading to a vast central chamber, unlike anything I'd seen before. The space was roughly circular, with 13 alcoves set into the walls, each containing what appeared to be a throne. The ceiling opened to space, protected by some kind of energy field that allowed the nebula's violet light to pour in. In the center stood a raised dais with 2 ornate chalices, one black, one silver, positioned on a pedestal that seemed to grow directly from the floor. The 13 lords entered, ancient Noctari with facial markings so complex they covered nearly their entire faces. They took their places in the alcoves, silver eyes gleaming in the dim light. Saressa and I approached the dais together, followed by our respective delegations. The chamber hummed with energy, both literal, in the bioluminescent veins that pulsed around us, and figurative, in the sense of momentous history unfolding. The eldest lord, his face a map of intricate markings, spoke in the dual-toned voice all Noctari shared, but deeper and more resonant. The cycle returns. The blood remembers. What was divided seeks union. This was ritualistic language I recognized from my dreams, the traditional opening of the final rite. But what happened next was definitely not traditional. A commotion erupted at the chamber's entrance. Guards shouted in alarm, weapons were drawn, and suddenly General Valek strode into the center of the ceremony, flanked by a dozen armed followers. "This abomination will not proceed," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The pure bloodline must be preserved." Somehow, he had escaped custody and rallied supporters for one final, desperate attempt to stop the ceremony. "You dishonor this sacred space, Valek," Saressa said, her voice cold with anger. "I protect it from contamination," he retorted. Then, addressing the 13 lords directly, "Honored ancestors, this human is unworthy of the bond. His blood will weaken us, not renew us." "The ancestral voice has spoken," one lord replied. "The cycle must complete." "Then I invoke the right of succession by combat," Valek declared, drawing a ceremonial blade. "If the human is worthy, let him prove it by Noctari law." Murmurs ran through the chamber. This was clearly an unexpected development. "What's happening?" I whispered to Talia, who stood nearby. "He's challenging you to ritual combat," she explained urgently. "If you refuse, he can claim your place in the ceremony." "And if I accept?" "You fight him, to the death?" "Great. Just what I needed. A duel to the death with an immortal space vampire general who'd been training for combat for centuries." "There must be another way," I said, looking to Saressa. Her expression was grim. "The challenge is valid under ancient law. You must either accept or withdraw from the blood rite entirely." Withdraw. The option I'd been seeking from the beginning was suddenly available. I could walk away, return to Earth, resume my ordinary life. But something within me rebelled at the thought. Not just the memory transfers or the biological changes already underway in my system, but my own human stubbornness. I'd come this far. I'd learned, adapted, embraced this strange destiny. I wouldn't let Valek's prejudice stop the process now. And yet, I knew I couldn't defeat him in combat. He was stronger, faster, more skilled, and literally designed for warfare in a way my human body was not. Unless. The dreams had shown me something, a fail-safe embedded in the oldest Noctari traditions. A phrase in Elder tongue that could be invoked only by one with the ancestral voice, and only during the final rite. It was a desperate gamble, but it was my only chance. "I accept the challenge," I said, stepping forward. Gasps came from the Earth delegation. Talia's eyes widened in alarm. Valek smiled coldly, clearly believing his victory was assured. "Prepare yourself, human." "I'm prepared," I replied. Then, drawing on the knowledge imparted through the memory transfers, I spoke in the most ancient form of Elder tongue. "Vaknari ethnor sulvek moreth, namreth converisul." I claim the right of the first compact. Let the founders judge worthiness. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entire chamber seemed to pulse with energy. The bioluminescent veins brightened to an almost painful intensity. The 13 lords rose from their thrones as one, their silver eyes fixed on me. The ancestral voice invokes the first compact. The eldest lord intoned. "The challenge is suspended. The founders will judge." Valek's expression shifted from triumph to confusion, then to alarm. "This is not possible. He cannot invoke founder law." "He has the ancestral voice," Saressa said. "It is his right." Before Valek could protest further, the chamber transformed. The energy field above us intensified, the nebula's light focusing into a column that engulfed the dais where Saressa and I stood. Within the light, I saw images from Noctari history, the genetic modifications, the founding of their civilization, the establishment of the blood right. And then a figure appeared, not physically present, but projected from the ship's biological memory. It was the same being I'd seen in my dreams, neither fully human nor fully Noctari, dressed in ancient garments that predated any fashion I recognized. "The first compact is invoked," the figure said, its voice somehow both ancient and immediate. "Let judgment begin." What followed was unlike any trial or test I could have imagined. The light column enveloped me completely, and I felt as if my entire being, body, mind, memories, intentions, was being scanned and evaluated against some ancient standard. I saw my life from outside myself, my childhood, my education, my career, my time on Viros 9. But I also saw potential futures branching out before me, paths I might take, changes I might bring to Noctari society. The process seemed to last both an instant and an eternity. When it ended, I found myself still standing on the dais, the light column fading back to normal illumination. The projected figure spoke again. "The human Mason Rook has been judged by founder standards. He carries the markers. He bears the voice. He is worthy of the blood right." Valek's face contorted with rage. "This cannot be! He is merely human!" "As were we, once," the figure replied. Then, addressing the assembled Noctari, "Remember the first compact. We transformed ourselves to survive among the stars, but we vowed never to forget our origins. The cycle of renewal is not contamination. It is necessary reconnection to prevent the stagnation that doomed other long-lived species." The figure turned to me. "Mason Rook, do you accept the responsibility of renewal? Do you understand that you will stand between what was and what will be?" I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of history and future pressing down on me. "I accept," I said, the words coming from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. "Then let the final rite proceed," the figure declared, before dissolving back into light. The chamber returned to its previous state, though the energy remained palpable. Valek stood frozen, his challenge invalidated by founder law, a level of authority even he couldn't contest. "Remove him," the eldest lord commanded, and Valek's own followers, clearly shaken by what they'd witnessed, escorted him from the chamber. The ceremony resumed with a new solemnity. The 2 chalices were prepared. The black one, filled with the synthesized founder blood. The silver, with my blood, mixed with catalysts. Saressa and I stood facing each other on the dais, following the ritual. I took the black chalice and she the silver. The 13 lords began a chant in elder tongue, a blessing and witness to the bond being formed. Blood to blood, Saressa said in formal tones. Past to future, divided to united. Path to path, I responded, the words coming naturally now. Memory to memory, renewal through reconnection. We drank simultaneously from our respective chalices. The liquid in mine tasted ancient and strange, metallic yet sweet, burning yet cooling. As it flowed through me, I felt an immediate change beginning at the cellular level, a transformation programmed into the founder blood thousands of years ago. The final words of the ritual came to both of us at once, and we spoke in unison. What was separate is now joined. What was forgotten is now remembered. The cycle continues. A pulse of energy emanated from the dais, spreading throughout the chamber and beyond, resonating through the living structure of Avarathos itself. The blood rite was complete. I had become the first human consort to a Noctari in recorded history, and something more, something even the Noctari themselves were only beginning to understand. Chapter 4. Mason of Darkness. The days following the final rite were a blur of diplomatic meetings, medical examinations, and cultural orientations. The bond between Saressa and me had created ripples throughout both Noctari and human society, forcing rapid adjustments to established protocols and relationships. My body was changing, though less dramatically than I'd feared. My lifespan had been extended, the medical teams estimated by several centuries at least. My cellular structure showed enhanced regenerative capabilities, and my sensory perception had sharpened considerably. But I still looked human, still felt human in most ways that mattered. The more significant changes were political and social. My status as consort with ancestral voice gave me unprecedented authority in Noctari circles. The conservative faction that had supported Violet was in disarray, while the moderates and progressives saw the renewed connection with humanity as an opportunity for positive change. Saressa and I established our primary residence on Avarathos, which would travel between Noctari space and Earth on a regular diplomatic circuit. Our first major project was developing a new framework for human-Noctari relations, one based on genetic kinship rather than the previous hierarchical model. The revelation of our common ancestry changes everything, Saressa observed as we worked on the draft agreement. Humans can no longer be classified as a young species, when they are, in fact, our root species. It's going to take time for both sides to adjust to this new understanding, I cautioned. Thousands of years of separate development have created genuine differences that can't be ignored. True, she acknowledged. But recognition of kinship provides a foundation for working through those differences. Our relationship was evolving as well. The blood bond had created a connection beyond anything I could have imagined. Not quite telepathy, but a profound awareness of each other's emotional states and basic thoughts. We functioned as partners in the truest sense, our strengths complementing each other's weaknesses. What I hadn't expected was how naturally we fell into more personal intimacy as well. The memory transfers had given each of us insight into the other's culture and perspective, making cross-species misunderstandings rare. We found common ground in unexpected places, a shared appreciation for complexity, a similar sense of duty, even compatible senses of humor, once we understood each other's reference points. 2 months after the final rite, we received a disturbing report. General Valek had escaped from the detention facility where he'd been held pending trial. He had disappeared with several loyal followers, presumably into the uncharted regions beyond Noctari space. He remains dangerous, Saressa warned, as we discussed the situation in our private chambers aboard Avarathos. His hatred of this union, of what it represents, has likely only intensified in captivity. You think he'll attempt some kind of retaliation? I asked. Eventually, she confirmed. Valek's sense of Noctari superiority was the core of his identity. Our revelation of human-Noctari kinship destroyed that foundation. He will seek to restore it, by destroying us, if necessary. We should increase security, I suggested, especially for the upcoming Earth visit. Saressa nodded in agreement. I've already ordered additional measures, but Valek is resourceful and patient. He may wait months or even years before striking. That was a sobering thought, the prospect of looking over our shoulders for centuries to come. But it was just one of many complexities we now had to navigate in our new roles. The diplomatic mission to Earth was scheduled for the following month, the first official visit by a Noctari delegation since the revelation of our shared ancestry. Preparations were intense, with both sides eager to establish a new foundation for relations. A week before our departure, Talia requested a private meeting. I hadn't seen much of her since the final rite. She'd been granted unprecedented access to Noctari historical archives and had been thoroughly immersed in research. "You look different," she observed when we met in a small study aboard Avarathos. "The changes are subtle, but visible to someone who knew you before." I shrugged. "The medical team says I'm about 30% Noctari at the cellular level now. Enough for the extended lifespan and enhanced healing. Not enough to turn blue." Talia smiled slightly. "How does it feel, being the bridge between two species?" "Overwhelming sometimes," I admitted. "But also, right, somehow. Like I've found a purpose I never knew I was looking for." She nodded, her expression turning serious. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Purpose. There's something you need to know before the Earth mission." "What is it?" Talia hesitated, then withdrew a small data device from her pocket. "I'm not exactly who I claim to be." "What do you mean?" "I am a xenobiologist," she clarified. "But my primary role has always been as an operative for the Multidimensional Interaction Management Agency." "I've never heard of it," I said, immediately suspicious. "Few have. We operate at the highest levels of secrecy, monitoring and managing interactions between different evolutionary paths." "Different evolutionary paths," I repeated. "You mean like humans and Noctari?" "Exactly like that," she confirmed. "Your union with Saressa wasn't entirely spontaneous. The circumstances were carefully arranged." I stared at her, trying to process this revelation. "Are you saying you engineered our meeting? The whole situation?" "Not engineered, exactly. More like facilitated. We identified you as a genetic match for the Noctari Renewal Protocol and positioned you where the interaction could occur naturally." "You manipulated me," I said, anger rising. "Used me as some kind of experimental subject." "We created an opportunity," Talia corrected. "Every choice you made was your own, from the joking proposal to the final acceptance of the bond. We simply made sure you were in the right place, at the right time." "Why? What possible reason could justify this level of intervention?" Talia activated the data device, projecting a complex diagram showing branching timelines and evolutionary paths. Human and Noctari development has been diverging too dramatically. Without reconnection, both species faced potential extinction events within the next millennium. "That doesn't make sense," I protested. "Humans are thriving, and the Noctari have survived for thousands of years." "On separate paths, yes. But the galaxy is changing. Mason. Threats are emerging that neither humans nor Noctari could face alone. The founder protocols weren't just about preventing genetic stagnation. They were about ensuring the survival of both branches of our shared evolutionary tree." I studied the projection, trying to make sense of the complex data. "What threats?" "That's classified," Talia said. "But I can tell you they're real, and they're coming. Your union with Saressa, the reconnection of our species, is part of the necessary preparation." I paced the small study, trying to process this bombshell. "Does Saressa know about this?" About your agency? No, Talia admitted. And she can't know, not yet. The Noctari need to believe the renewal cycle is their own ancestral wisdom, not external intervention. So you want me to lie to my wife, the person I share blood and memories with? Talia's expression was sympathetic but firm. I am asking you to protect information that could destabilize an already delicate situation. When the time is right, the full truth can be revealed. I stopped pacing and faced her directly. Why tell me at all, then? Why not keep me in the dark, too? Because you're the linchpin, Mason, the bridge between worlds. And because in the coming years, you'll need to make decisions with the bigger picture in mind. She held my gaze. You've already shown remarkable adaptability and insight. We believe you can handle the truth. We, I repeated. Your mysterious agency. Yes. She handed me the data device. This contains encrypted information about our organization and your role in the larger context. It's keyed to your DNA. Only you can access it. I took the device reluctantly. And if I refuse this role? If I tell Saressa everything right now? That's your choice, Talia said simply. We don't control you, Mason. We never did. We simply helped position you where your natural abilities could have the greatest impact. And then disappear back into the shadows? I asked bitterly. Not entirely, she smiled faintly. I'll remain your scientific liaison, just with a slightly expanded job description. After Talia left, I sat alone in the study for hours, turning the data device over in my hands, wrestling with this new layer of complexity in my already transformed life. Part of me wanted to destroy the device, tell Saressa everything, and reject this unseen agency's plans. But another part, the part that had embraced the blood rite and all it entailed, recognized the possibility that Talia was right, that my union with Saressa might serve a greater purpose than either of us had realized. In the end, I secured the device in a private compartment and decided to wait. I would watch, listen, gather more information before making any irrevocable decisions. The data would remain my secret, for now. One revelation that couldn't wait, however, was the truth about Noctari origins. The final rite had confirmed what my dreams had suggested. The Noctari had indeed evolved from human stock, though the exact mechanism and timeline remained unclear. Saressa and I convened a joint Human Noctari Scientific Commission to investigate this shared history. The preliminary findings were astounding. Approximately 50,000 years ago, a group of genetically advanced humans had left Earth, using technology that had subsequently been lost to history. These pioneers had settled in what would become Noctari space and begun the process of adaptive evolution that ultimately created the Noctari species. The founder protocols, including the blood rite and the renewal cycle, had been established to maintain connection with the root species, though over the millennia, the original purpose had become obscured by myth and tradition. It's remarkable, Ambassador Williams observed during a briefing on these findings. This rewrites our understanding of human history and potential. It also raises questions about other potential offshoots, Saressa added. If one group of ancient humans achieved this level of advancement, there may be others scattered throughout the galaxy. The implications were enormous, not just for human-Noctari relations, but for our understanding of galactic history and the future of intelligent life. And I found myself at the center of it all, uniquely positioned as the first modern instance of human-Noctari reintegration. As our departure for Earth approached, I felt the weight of these multiple layers of responsibility. I was simultaneously a diplomat, a scientific subject, a cultural bridge, and, if Talia was to be believed, a key figure in some greater cosmic design. All because of a stupid joke at a diplomatic reception. Life has a strange sense of humor sometimes. Chapter 5. Lover of the Immortal. The Earth visit was a triumph of diplomacy. The revelation of human-Noctari kinship transformed the relationship overnight, from one of junior-senior species to genetic cousins reuniting after a long separation. Public reaction ranged from skepticism to excitement. But the overwhelming response was positive. Humanity suddenly had advanced relatives in the galactic community. Saressa and I became the public faces of this new relationship, conducting interviews, attending ceremonies, and meeting with leaders from around the world. As the first human Noctari couple, we embodied the reconnection in a way that resonated with people on both sides. "You've adapted well to public life," Saressa observed after a particularly exhausting day of appearances. We were resting in our quarters in the newly established Noctari Embassy in Geneva, a striking structure that combined Earth and Noctari architectural elements. "I had no choice," I replied with a rueful smile. "Turns out being married to an ambassador makes you kind of important." "You were always important," she said softly. "The difference is that now others recognize it as well." Our relationship had deepened considerably over the months since the final rite. The blood bond created a foundation of understanding that would have taken years to develop otherwise. I could sense her moods, sometimes even catch fragments of her thoughts, and she had similar awareness of me. It wasn't always easy. We still came from vastly different cultural backgrounds with different assumptions and values. But the mutual insight provided by the bond made working through those differences more manageable than they might have been otherwise. "What happens after this tour?" I asked. "Do we return to Avarathos?" "Eventually," Saressa said. "But first, the Council has requested our presence at the renewal conclave on Noctur itself." I sat up straighter. "Your homeworld? I thought outsiders were rarely permitted there." "You are not an outsider, Mason," she reminded me. "You are consort with ancestral voice, and the circumstances are exceptional. The revelation of our shared origins has prompted the first full conclave in nearly a millennium." The prospect of visiting Noctar, the world I'd seen so often in my dreams, was both exciting and intimidating. "When do we leave?" "In 3 weeks. There are preparations to be made, protocols to be observed." She studied me thoughtfully. "The conclave will also address the question of our future role." "What do you mean?" "Your invocation of ancestral voice and the activation of the founder protocols have elevated us beyond our previous positions," she explained. "There is discussion of creating a new joint office, Custodians of the Covenant, to oversee the reconnection process." "That sounds significant," I said cautiously. "It would be—" "The custodians would have authority across both human and Noctari space, answerable only to the Council and Earth's united governance." The prospect was daunting. Even more responsibility, more visibility, more pressure to navigate the complexities of our unique position. And yet, I found myself intrigued rather than intimidated. The months since the final rite had changed me in ways beyond the physical. I felt more capable, more confident in my ability to handle complex diplomatic and cultural challenges. Was that the Noctari blood influence, the memory transfers, or simply the natural growth that came from being thrust into extraordinary circumstances? Perhaps all three. "Do you want this role?" I asked Saressa. "I believe it is necessary," she replied diplomatically. "That's not what I asked." She smiled slightly, acknowledging the evasion. "Yes, I want it. I believe we are uniquely positioned to guide this reconnection process, but it must be a mutual decision. The role would require full commitment from both of us." I thought about it, weighing the implications. This would be a lifetime commitment, which, given my enhanced lifespan, now meant centuries rather than decades. It would define my existence in ways I couldn't fully predict. And yet, the alternative, returning to my previous life, pretending I could be an ordinary human after everything that had happened, seemed impossible. I had crossed a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. "I'm in," I said simply. Ceresa's silver eyes brightened with what I now recognized as pleasure. We will discuss it further before the conclave. There are many factors to consider. One factor she didn't mention, but which weighed on my mind, was Talia's revelation about the multidimensional interaction management agency. I still hadn't decided what to do with that information, whether to trust Talia's assertions about greater threats on the horizon or to dismiss them as manipulation. The data device she'd given me remained secure in my private effects, unopened. Part of me wanted to access its contents, to understand the full context of what she'd told me. But another part hesitated, aware that once I viewed that information, I would be further entangled in whatever plans her agency had. Our final night on Earth was spent at a gala celebration hosted by the United Governance. Representatives from all major Earth nations and several off-world colonies attended, along with the full Naktari diplomatic delegation. It was a glittering affair, a far cry from the reception on Viros 9, where this all began. As Ceresa and I circulated among the guests, receiving congratulations and fielding questions about our unique union, I caught sight of a familiar face across the room. Talia was engaged in conversation with a senior Earth official, dressed in formal scientific corps attire, rather than her usual practical workwear. "Excuse me a moment," I murmured to Ceresa, who nodded and continued her discussion with an East African diplomat. I made my way through the crowd toward Talia, who noticed my approach and smoothly extricated herself from her conversation. "Mason," she greeted me with a slight smile. "Quite a difference from our first meeting in your quarters on Viros 9. "A lifetime ago," I agreed, "though only a few months in reality." "Time is relative," she said cryptically, "especially when you're measuring it across multiple evolutionary paths." I glanced around to ensure we weren't being overheard. "I haven't accessed the device you gave me." "I know," she replied, "but you will when you're ready." "And if I'm never ready? If I decide to destroy it instead?" "That would be your choice," Talia said calmly. "But I don't think you will. Curiosity has always been one of your defining traits, Mason. It's part of why you were selected." "You make it sound like I was bred for this role." "Not bred," she corrected. "Identified. There were several potential candidates with the necessary genetic markers. You were simply the most promising in terms of adaptability and perspective." "Lucky me," I said dryly. Talia's expression softened slightly. "It may not feel like it now, but you are fortunate. You're experiencing something no human has in modern history, a true merger of evolutionary paths. The knowledge you'll gain, the perspective you'll develop, it's beyond price." "At what cost, though? My autonomy, my identity?" "Your identity is expanding, not being erased," she countered. "As for autonomy, every choice has been and will continue to be yours. We create circumstances. We don't control outcomes." I studied her face, trying to discern sincerity from manipulation. "Will I see you on Noktar?" "No," she said. "My role in this phase is complete. You'll have other contacts when the time comes." "So this is goodbye?" "For now," Talia confirmed. "But our paths will cross again. Mason, when the bigger picture begins to come into focus." With that cryptic statement, she nodded politely and moved away through the crowd. I watched her go, wondering if I would indeed see her again, and under what circumstances. The journey to Noktar took nearly 3 weeks, even with the advanced propulsion systems of Avarathos. The Noktari homeworld lay in a distant sector of the galactic frontier, surrounded by a complex network of defense systems and navigational hazards that made casual visitation impossible. As we approached, I spent hours in the observation dome, watching as the familiar stars of Earth's night sky gave way to unfamiliar constellations. Eventually, a red-tinged star came into view, Nok, the primary of the Noktari system. "It looks exactly as it did in my dreams," I murmured to Ceresa, who stood beside me watching our approach. "The memory transfers were comprehensive," she agreed, But experiencing it directly will be different. She was right. As Avarathos entered orbit around Noctur, the reality of the world below took my breath away. 3 pale moons hung in the sky, just as in my dreams. But the actual planet was more dramatic than any mental image could capture. Vast crimson oceans covered much of the surface, with continents of dark stone rising in jagged formations. The atmosphere had a reddish tint that made the sunlight seem perpetually like Earth's sunset. And scattered across the visible landmasses were the living cities of the Noctari, massive biological structures that resembled the architecture of Avarathos, but on a planetary scale. "It's beautiful," I said softly, "in an alien way." "It will be challenging for you physically," Saressa warned. "The gravity is 1.3 times Earth standard, and the atmosphere is thinner with higher metallic content. Your enhanced physiology will adapt, but it may take time." She was right about that too. When we disembarked at the Grand Nexus, the primary spaceport and diplomatic center of Noctur, the gravity hit me immediately, making my movements feel sluggish and deliberate. The air tasted metallic, and I found myself breathing more rapidly to compensate for the lower oxygen content. But these discomforts were overshadowed by the wonder of finally standing on this world I'd seen so often in transferred memories. The Grand Nexus was a marvel of bioengineering, a vast, semi-sentient structure that adjusted its internal configuration based on the needs of its occupants. Corridors shifted, chambers expanded or contracted, and bioluminescent guidance systems directed visitors to their destinations. We were escorted to our quarters within the ancestral spire, the ancient seat of Noctari governance. The structure rose thousands of meters into the sky. Its exterior, a complex lattice of bone-like material, interwoven with the familiar pulsing veins I'd seen on Avarathos. Within, the chambers were adapted for diplomatic visitors, with concessions to non-Noctari physiology, including enhanced atmospheric controls. "Rest now," Saressa advised as attendants departed, leaving us alone in our suite. "The conclave begins tomorrow, and it will be demanding even for those accustomed to Noctur's conditions." I moved to the viewport, gazing out at the alien landscape below. From this height, I could see one of the crimson oceans in the distance, its surface reflecting the light of the setting sun. Closer, the living city spread out in organic patterns, pulsing with activity. "It's strange," I said thoughtfully. "In some ways, this feels more like coming home than returning to Earth did." Saressa joined me at the viewport. "The memory transfers. They've given you a connection to this world that most humans could never have." "More than that," I admitted. "Something about being here feels right, like a piece clicking into place." She placed her hand over mine. Our skin tones, her blue-tinged, mine still human, contrasting against the viewport's edge. The founders intended that feeling. The renewal cycle is not just biological, but psychological, a reconnection of branching paths. I turned to face her. "Do you ever regret accepting my accidental proposal, taking on all the complications that came with it?" Saressa considered the question with typical Noctari thoroughness. "No," she said finally. "The path has been unexpected, but it has also been illuminating. You have changed me, Mason, as I have changed you. That exchange is valuable beyond measure." It was perhaps the most personal statement she'd ever made about our relationship, an acknowledgement that beyond the politics, beyond the biology, beyond the historical significance, there was something meaningful between us as individuals. The renewal conclave began the next day with a ceremony in the vast Chamber of Ancestors, a circular space at the heart of the ancestral spire. The entire Noctari Council was present, along with representatives from every major bloodline. The human delegation was smaller but significant, including Ambassador Williams and several high-ranking United Governance officials. The proceedings were conducted primarily in modern Noctari, with translation services for the human delegates. However, certain ritual elements were spoken in Elder tongue, phrases I now understood without translation, thanks to the memory transfers. The first 3 days were dominated by historical presentations and scientific discussions about the newly confirmed relationship between humans and Naktari. Experts from both species presented evidence, debated interpretations, and proposed frameworks for understanding our shared past. On the fourth day, attention turned to the future, specifically to the proposed establishment of the custodians of the covenant. Saressa and I were called to the center of the chamber to hear the formal proposal. The eldest council member, his face a map of intricate markings that indicated a lifespan of nearly a millennium, addressed us in the dual-toned voice of the Naktari. The revelation of our common origins necessitates new structures of governance and interaction, he began. The founder protocols anticipated this moment, the reconnection of divergent evolutionary paths after 50 millennia of separation. He gestured to an ancient display that materialized in the air before us, glowing symbols in the oldest form of Naktari writing. The Covenant of Renewal specifies that when the paths reconverge, custodians must be appointed to guide the process. Traditionally, these would be drawn from the most ancient Naktari bloodlines. There was a murmur among the assembly at this. Clearly, the tradition was well known. However, the elder continued, the founders also provided for exceptional circumstances. When renewal occurs through the blood right with ancestral voice, the bonded pair may claim the right of custodianship directly. This caused a greater stir, apparently a less familiar provision. Lady Saressa of the House of Naris and Mason Rook of Earth stand before us as the first such pair in modern history, the elder announced. The council proposes that they be appointed as the first custodians of the covenant, with authority across both Naktari and human space to oversee the reconnection process. The formal proposal was followed by several hours of debate, some supportive, some skeptical, but all remarkably respectful, given the unprecedented nature of what was being suggested. Throughout, Saressa and I stood in the center of the chamber, listening, but not participating as tradition required. Finally, the elder called for a vote. The result was not unanimous, but was decisively in favor. 42 council members supporting the appointment, 13 opposing, and 5 abstaining. The council has spoken, the elder declared. Lady Saressa and Mason Rook will be invested as custodians of the covenant at the conclusion of the conclave. It was done. Whatever normal life I might have once envisioned for myself was now irrevocably altered. I had become not just the husband of a Naktari ambassador, not just a genetic bridge between species, but a formal authority figure with responsibilities spanning multiple worlds. That night, as Saressa and I discussed the implications of our new role, I finally made a decision about Talia's data device. If I was to be a custodian, responsible for guiding the reconnection of our species, I needed all available information, including whatever context her mysterious agency could provide. While Saressa was engaged in a private communication with her ancestral house, I retrieved the device from its secure compartment and activated it. As promised, it recognized my DNA, unfolding into a holographic display that only I could see from my viewing angle. The information it contained was staggering, far beyond what Talia had hinted at in our conversations. The Multidimensional Interaction Management Agency wasn't merely concerned with human-Naktari relations, but with the management of multiple evolutionary paths across the galaxy and beyond. According to their data, intelligent life had emerged simultaneously in several locations roughly 100,000 years ago, a statistical impossibility unless some common factor had influenced development. Earth had been one such location, but there were others, scattered throughout our galaxy and neighboring ones. These original populations had taken different paths. Some, like the Proto-Naktari, leaving their homeworlds to adapt to new environments. Others, remaining in place but developing in isolation. Over time, these paths had diverged dramatically, creating the mosaic of intelligent species now known to galactic civilization. But the agency had detected a pattern in these divergences, a cycle of separation and reconnection that seemed to correspond with larger cosmic events. And, according to their projections, a major reconnection phase was now beginning. One that would either result in unprecedented cooperation and advancement among intelligent species, or catastrophic conflict. The human-Noctari reconnection was just the first and most critical of these convergences. Others would follow, each bringing its own challenges and opportunities. And the custodians, Saressa and I, would play a pivotal role in establishing the pattern for these subsequent reunifications. Most disturbing of all was the reason behind this urgent timing. The agency had detected signs of an approaching extragalactic presence, something they referred to only as the divergence, a force or entity that had apparently been responsible for similar cycles of species development and extinction in other galaxies. Its nature was unknown, its intentions unclear, but its pattern was consistent. It would test newly reconnected species for worthiness, preserving those that demonstrated sufficient advancement and harmony, while allowing others to fade into evolutionary dead ends. The data ended with a simple message. When the time comes, a choice will be presented. The custodians must be prepared to answer not just for their species, but for all divergent paths of intelligence in this cycle. I deactivated the device, my mind reeling with implications. If this information was accurate, and I had no way to verify it independently, then our new role carried stakes far beyond what anyone in the conclave realized. We weren't just guiding a diplomatic process. We were potentially preparing our species for some kind of cosmic evaluation. Should I tell Saressa? The question plagued me throughout the remaining days of the conclave. On one hand, our bond was based on openness and shared purpose. On the other, introducing unverifiable information from a mysterious third party could undermine the delicate political balance we were establishing. In the end, I decided to wait, to gather more information, to look for corroborating evidence in the ancient Noctari records that would now be open to me as a custodian. If the agency's claims had merit, there would be traces in the founder protocols and historical archives. And if not, well, then I would have avoided unnecessarily complicating an already complex situation. The investiture ceremony took place on the final day of the conclave, under the light of all 3 moons in perfect alignment, a rare astronomical event that occurred only once every 73 years. Saressa and I stood before the assembled representatives of both species, dressed in ceremonial attire that combined elements of Noctari and human design. The ritual was ancient, but the application new. Phrases in elder tongue that had never been spoken over a human Noctari pair before. As the eldest council member placed the custodian's sigil, a complex biomechanical device that would interface directly with our nervous systems, on each of our left wrists, I felt a surge of connection not just to Saressa, but to something larger. The sigils activated simultaneously, creating a 3-dimensional projection visible to all assembled, a representation of 2 DNA strands, one human, one Noctari, intertwining to form a new pattern that was neither one nor the other, but a harmonious integration of both. "The covenant is renewed," the elder declared. "The paths reconverge. The custodians will guide." The chamber erupted in a sound that wasn't quite applause. Noctari expressed approval differently, but conveyed a similar sentiment. It was a moment of historical significance, the formal beginning of a new era in human-Noctari relations. As we processed out of the chamber, newly invested with our responsibilities, Saressa spoke privately through our bond, a capability enhanced by the custodian sigils. "This is just the beginning," she said without speaking aloud. "There is much work ahead." "I know," I replied in the same manner, "but we'll face it together." And we would. whatever came next. Whether it was the gradual process of reconnection the conclave envisioned, or the cosmic test the agency had warned about. We had become something neither of our species had anticipated. A true union of divergent evolutionary paths, stronger together than either could be alone. As we emerged onto the grand balcony overlooking the living city of Noctar, 3 moons shining above us, and representatives of 2 once separated species behind us. I thought about the absurd journey that had brought me here. From a joking proposal at a diplomatic reception to becoming half Noctari and co-custodian of an ancient covenant. Life really does have a strange sense of humor. But maybe that was the point. Maybe it was that uniquely human quality, the ability to find humor in the absurd, to adapt through laughter, to forge connections through shared amusement, that made me suitable for this role. A small, but essential contribution to the greater purpose of reconnection. Whatever challenges lay ahead, political, biological, or cosmic, I would face them with that same spirit, not just as Mason Rook, accidental husband to a vampire ambassador from space, but as custodian of the Covenant, guardian of reconnection, and bridge between divergent paths of intelligence. Not bad for a neural network technician who just wanted to get through a boring diplomatic reception. The true test would come later. For now, standing beside Ceresa under alien moons, I allowed myself to feel something that had been rare in my life before this strange journey began. Purpose. A sense that whatever accidents or manipulations had brought me here, this was where I belonged. The future, with all its unknowns and complications, could wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for marking how far we'd come, from a dangerous, like to eternal partners. Sometimes the best jokes are the ones the universe plays on us. And sometimes, just sometimes, they have the happiest endings.